So what are we looking at here on these sawhorses?
So this is all your frames. Typically you're gonna see them wrapped in bubble wrap and then shrink wrapped for protection during shipping. And sometimes they'll arrive in the packaging with the panels, and sometimes they'll be separate depending on length.
Okay.
Usually we lay them out, make sure that we have 5 pieces per opening. And so you're gonna have a lower track, an upper track, 2 side jams, and then an exterior jam extension kit.
Okay.
Now you know you got everything. Let's cut them open and let's do some inspection.
What do we need to cut them with?
We'll use scissors.
Scissors.
Be careful with a knife because you could scratch the coating. So we always use scissors and try and be thoughtful when we're opening these.
Perfect, let's get some scissors.
All right.
So it looks like you're cutting it open on a specific side. Is there a certain rhyme or reason to where you're choosing to cut with the scissors?
There's an opening in all of our extrusions.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to kind of cut down that valley. You just want to be careful with where you're cutting to make sure that you're not scratching the exterior frame.
Okay.
Most of our parts are shaped like a C. They've got an opening on one of the 4 sides.
Yep.
And so what I'm normally doing is dropping the scissors into that opening and then cutting along so I'm not scratching any of this exterior frame.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so now we have everything unwrapped. So walk me through again the parts that we should be looking at.
So the first step I would say is just to inspect all the parts.
Okay.
Regardless of what they are. Look for damage, look for scratches. If anything seems like it's out of place, then you should be calling us and saying what's going on here. So make sure that your seals are all in good shape. And again, just a basic inspection. This is when you want to notify us if anything seems off.
All right.
We have our lower track. So that's going to be the smallest profile in the bunch. Then we have our upper track, and as you can see, it's 2 parts. It's pretty easy to identify. It's the biggest part out of everything. And then we have our 2 side jams. And so these are set up to be mirror image of each other.
Okay.
So when they're laying out, you can see that this fin here is opposite of this one. So you want to make sure that these big spaces are at one end, these spaces are smaller.
Smaller space.
And so they're laying beside each other, and we want to make sure that they're mirror image of each other.
Now, is the bigger space the top or is that the bottom?
That is the top.
That's the top,
yeah.
Okay.
So again, your lower track, because it's a smaller profile, it fits in at the bottom here.
In the smaller side.
And then the larger, taller upper track fits on this side.
Perfect, easy enough.
So you know top and bottom.
Yep.
And then last but not least is our exterior jam extension kit.
Okay.
And so typically you're going to get either 3 to 5 parts here. You're going to get 2 parts that go on the side, that mount onto the side jams.
All right.
And then 2 to 3, sometimes 1 part that will mount onto the top track.
Okay. All right, now that we've inspected and we've identified we have everything we need, where do we go from here?
We're going to look at the build box. So that is the parts, the minimum amount of hardware that you need just to kind of finish out the system at the end. And so we'll walk through that now.
Great. So you want to look at the build box. I know you said earlier there's some T-wrenches that would come in the build box. What else do we have in here?
So the first thing is this: any specialty tool, a metric Allen wrench kit is not something that most contractors will keep. And so we mail out the actual tools that you would need to install the product. So there are 3 wrenches in there, 2 T-bars and a standard Allen wrench. Those are the absolutely required tools to do our
install.
To do the install. Yeah.
Okay, what else do we have?
So next we have a bag of pop rivets.
Okay.
Again, we talked about the pop rivet gun.
Sure.
These are 1/8" pop rivets, color coded. This is for installing your exterior jam extension.
This looks like a lot of rivets. Are you going to use up all of these?
No, you're going to have extra. There's always extras sent of all the fasteners. We have extra screws for your lower hinge.
Okay.
And so these are metric screws, and so we've sent extra of them. Then we have, we call it the wheel guide cover, and so this is the opening on the exterior side of the track. This is a cosmetic cover that goes over it, and with that you're going to have the required screws. And then the last thing is your hole plug cover. So in your side jams, you're going to have fastener holes and adjuster holes, and these will cover those up once you're finished with the install.
Oh, so after you've adjusted it, then you can cover that back up.
Again, cosmetic finish. And as you can tell, there's not a whole lot of hardware that's coming with the system in the build box.
Yeah.
And this is because, again, we're putting all of our hardware on, so there's not a whole lot of hardware.
That's perfect. And always having extras.
Correct.
All right. What about actually mounting the frames to the construction, to the house?
Yeah, so we're going to supply the contractor with a list of recommended fasteners.
Okay.
All of these fasteners can be found at any hardware store. Some of them depend on your opening and what your surface is that you're fastening to. And so
What would be an example of different surfaces?
So typically in the US, about 80% of the openings that you're gonna be fastening into are wood.
Okay.
So, but you could have concrete, like an ICF house.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going into steel, and then most of the time we're going into concrete on the lower surface. But sometimes you'll do a second story install where you'll be mounting into wood. Very rarely do you see steel on the bottom,
Okay.
but again, you're going to see a variety of surfaces. And so instead of sending out all of the appropriate fasteners for every single type of install,
Sure.
we're going to make a very easy list with QR codes where you can scan that QR code and pick it up from Home Depot. or
Perfect.
those.
What are we looking at here?
So the first part is lower track install.
Okay.
And so typically, like I said, we're seeing concrete. So we're using a standard Tapcon. These are 2 3/4 inch. Sometimes you might need a longer one or a shorter one, depending on your application. But these are what we usually use.
Okay.
The next part is your upper track.
Yeah.
We use ledger lock screws, and so these are easy to drive with a hex driver.
Yep.
They're the same head size as the Tapcons.
Sure.
And so that makes it easy for your
Makes it
driver
simple.
bit.
Yeah.
And today we're using a 5-inch. These come in 3.5 inch, 5 inch, and I believe even longer.
Okay.
Typically, if you're installing something at 8 foot or under, so 8 foot door system
Yep.
or a window system, you can use the 3.5 inch, and that's plenty. And then anything over 8 feet, we recommend moving up to a 5 inch.
A little more weight.
Correct.
Perfect.
And then for the side jams, we're going to recommend a 4-inch deck screw.
Okay.
And so you could use a 3-inch or something shorter than 4-inch.
Yep.
But it's going to make the install a lot easier if you use a 4-inch screw.
Perfect. Simple enough.
Yep.
Okay, so what are we looking at next?
So we're gonna look at traditional opening. 80% of the openings that our door systems will be put into
Okay.
will be into a wood framed wall. Again, variations, but we're not gonna go over that.
Okay.
So what you're gonna normally see is a header across the opening. That's very important because our system is a top hung system. And so we want that header to carry the load of our system. And then you're gonna have wood trimmers on both sides that you're fastening your side jam into.
Okay.
And then typically you're gonna get a concrete surface for your bottom track to fasten into.
Okay.
We have an aluminum part here because we're in an interior scenario, but typically that would be concrete. So we're gonna walk through kind of some of the waterproofing that you would normally see.
Perfect.
All right, so normally we're gonna see a solid stainless steel pan. This is usually has welded corners. You have a nice back dam in here, and it's the appropriate depth for our product. And so what we're gonna see is our product takes up about 3 inches, and so this will be about a 3-inch sill pan to the back dam. Then we're gonna see, normally it's some sort of flashing tape. We like to see it wrapped to the interior side of that dam, the back dam.
Sure.
That way when you're spray foaming or sealing anything here, it's sealing to this tape. And so that flashing tape will run all the way to the top.
Yep.
On both sides, and that will come down and shingle over the side of the sill pan. And so any water that's rolling down here will shingle over and fall into the sill pan and come out. And so typical opening prep before we start the install is to see sill pan and then flashing tapes on both sides.
Okay.
And then we're ready to do the install.
Perfect. Well, let's get started.